What's going on, guys? Kind of off day garden report. I think we got sad, Bobby, that tomorrow might be the final show, so we decided to sneak in another one. But there's significant news to discuss because Jaylen Brown makes all NBA second team, and it's not rah rah pom poms. Jaylen did it. This has massive significance for the Celtics, as many people know, and as we've discussed a lot of times, in terms of their long term future and whether Brown remains in Boston. So we'll kind of break down those implications. We'll get into a little bit of um, Game 6 preview stuff. Joe Mazzulla talked today. Bobby will break down some of that stuff. Bobby will talk about some of the adjustments he thinks they might need to make. And we'll try to rip through it in a nice, clean 30 minutes or so just to get you guys in and out. So that's it. Just want to let you guys know. Podcast, as always, is powered by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Get your no sweat first bet up to 1,000 bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/Boston. Of course, Athletic Greens, everybody knows about them. Go to AG1, athleticgreens.com/garden. Full year supply of vitamin D, 5 free travel packs. And our cup runneth over. HelloFresh, HelloFresh.com. Use the code HelloFresh.com/16garden. Use that code 16garden, 16 free meals and free shipping. Bobby loves himself some HelloFresh, maybe more than anybody I know.
Yeah, definitely.
So
The fish.
he loves it. Bobby loves it. So check that out. Anyway, let's get on to what we're talking about here. We'll start with Jaylen Brown. We know he can't be traded for a year after he signs a Supermax if he signs a Supermax. The point is you can sign it this summer here. And this is hugely important, Bobby, because in the final year of his contract, you're going to know this summer whether he's with you or not with you. If he signs it, you've got Jaylen Brown for 5 years, or at least the rights to Jaylen Brown for 5 years. He can obviously try to demand a trade, as many others do, if things go south with the franchise, or just he just doesn't want to be here anymore. But if he turns it down, you absolutely know what you have to do. So the key here is not the sunny outlook is Jaylen Brown's here for the long run, which is great. The most important thing is you're going to have clarity one way or the other by the summer, and then you can kind of start to really figure things out. Because if he doesn't want to be here and he turns this down, you've got to really get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would have been complicated without this. It's amazing that the Celtics get this clarity now on this and can extend this offer. Hard to imagine him declining this offer if they push it toward the table, and he's going to get about $50 million a year on this deal, which is just a staggering total. Makes up and then some for the slightly lesser deal he signed, the second deal with the Celtics. So this is great news. It didn't end up being close at all. He blows by Randall and LeBron and Markkanen. I had him third team. He ends up a slam dunk with 45 second place votes. So this is great. I think it shows.
I think I picked second team, Bobby. I think I said he's going to get it. Second team.
Yeah, I dove deep into the numbers and picked them apart. The analytics, as we talked about, weren't amazing.
Did Markkanen get smoked?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't make it for LeBron. LeBron didn't play enough. But you knew he was going to get the status vote. In fact, when I saw they all came out at the same time, and I saw LeBron on third, I said, like you saw a name pop in there that
wasn't that scary.
It's like waiting for the tournament teams. You see a team that you didn't think was going to be in there, and you're like,
When Brown wasn't on that third team in place of LeBron, things got really interesting because that could have gone another way. But locked in second team, good for him. I mean, and
an amazing year,
and good for the Celtics, obviously.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. I'm glad I've had 24 hours to come on here about this because last night was just so emotionally charged and angry on all fronts. I think we all look at this now and say the best thing that the Celtics can do is offer this deal, keep them, and then figure it out later. Give yourself an extra year. And that is basically what you'd be doing here with this contract.
It's the best thing he can do.
Both sides.
As well, yeah.
Yeah. So you get yourself an extra year. There's no trade concerns for him for a year. For the Celtics, they can't trade him, so it just settles this core for another year, and they can buy themselves some time, maybe make some moves on the edges, adjust the coaching staff, and do little things. Now, there's two other considerations here. First is Tatum obviously made All-NBA today too and clinched himself $318 million in 2024. So you're now looking at $600 million between two players, $100 million a year between two players for a team that is going to go into the repeater tax, for a team that's probably going to be brushing up against that new tax here that penalizes you with draft picks and everything else.
Yep.
So this is what's killer right now about not cashing in on this golden opportunity to win a championship this year. It's going to get harder and harder each passing year from now, especially when these extensions kick in for the Celtics to put a team around these guys. Horford is reaching the end of his career. Rob signed for good money, great. Smart signed for good money. Brogdon, how's that contract look in a few years? We'll see. White signed good. So you do generally have your core, but it's going to get expensive fast. You're probably going to lose Grant this summer. You don't have your pick this summer. You have your pick next year, which is good, and a couple of years after that before the Spurs one goes out. But generally, it's going to get harder to build around the Jays, and there's going to have to be some cuts, I'm sure. There's going to have to be some adjustments around the edges of the roster, starting with Grant. It's really hard to imagine Grant coming back at this point for really anything. And you got to ask yourself, all right, do you want a tighter roster around these two stars, a thinner roster, or do you want kind of a wider roster around the one star in Tatum? And if you don't win this year with Brown and Tatum, now's the time to make that decision.
Well, the decisions are this, and everything folds together, right, Bobby?
Because I don't think you can get Brown at a discount. It's going to be $295 or nothing, right?
No, you're definitely not getting a discount, but everything folds together, right? There's a lot to consider, which is if everything went the way you thought it went, and this team made the finals or won the finals, it's just run it back, and then worry about stuff down the road. You lose in 6 games or 7 games, doesn't matter. You lose in the second round to Philadelphia this year with this team. You have
in this manner,
you have major questions about the core. And I know people will be like, it's the coach, it's this, it's that. Fine, whatever. We can go around in circles on that stuff. Bottom line is it's the same core for 6 years. And now you've had 3 coaches in the last 3 years, each of whom does certain things differently. And I'm not going to sit here and defend Joe. I think Joe is definitely a little bit underwater right now. Point being, you got to really decide what you want your future to be. It doesn't matter. You need to sign Jaylen because you need to retain the asset. So you're going to offer him that money. I mean, is there a world in which Wick doesn't want that money to go out to Brown for some reason? That would be something. The offer is not made. It's a thing we haven't considered at all. But what if there's a decision up top that this isn't a $300 million man for me, and they just decide they want to move him? That would be unexpected. But that could be on the table.
It's
we
a
don't
possibility.
Know.
Depending
we don't
on
know. The most realistic thing is what we said. For both sides, you sign it, and then you figure it out later because you want to retain the asset. Brown wants to lock in that $300 million because he says no to it now. He goes to sign somewhere else. He's not Supermax eligible anymore, and his next deal's for $220 million instead of $300. So not great. I mean, he's leaving a lot of money on the table. It makes sense to sign it. And then you start to question, what do you do with Tatum? What do you do with this? So this was an all-in scenario, Bobby. We all know it. You burnt draft picks to bring in Brogdon, to bring in Derek White, to bring in Horford and get off of Kemba, one after the other, thus mortgaging any chance at kind of building up and establishing some sort of future beyond these guys. This is your future. It's now. This is your team with some aging veterans around them, not like 38-year-old veterans, but like, I don't know, windows close really fast here. And like, the question is, do you run it back one more, even if you go out this way, and then see what happens after that? Or do you start to think about making changes in the offseason? Like, it's early to have that conversation because you don't know how the rest of this series is going to play out or how the rest of the playoffs is going to play out.
Yeah, but if they fizzle out, I think it is fair to say start to take a look at making some changes. And that's everything here. I think they will, if they lose in this series, look at everything short of Tatum, and that includes Brown. And I haven't heard anything specifically on the money thing because you do hear that thrown around by, not anyone in the know, but just, we'll pay Brown this amount. I don't know. We've had that discussion before, and then he went out and got Brogdon and went deep into the tax. This is a much bigger commitment when you talk about going deep into the tax under the new CBA, but I'm sure they'll do it if they're in championship contention. And if you lose this series, can you say you're in championship contention? Because we had the conversation, John, last night. You almost lost to Milwaukee last year. We were playing hypotheticals. They won those series, but you almost lose to Milwaukee. You almost lose to Miami on that Butler shot. It's a whole different conversation last summer if they lose to Miami. And is this finish here against Philadelphia more indicative of who they are and who this core is, especially when you start to think about this core not getting much better into the future? Horford is aging. Rob continues to stagnate, especially under this coach. It doesn't seem like this coach loves building around Rob. Brogdon. I think you're seeing Brogdon's worst play at the worst time right now, which is just brutal.
You're seeing Derek White's worst play at the worst time right now. This comment, from one of my favorite Garden Report viewers, John Zannis Pies, is kind of, how long has this been a conversation, Bobby? The splitting up the Jays.
It's been for a long time, and I've never entertained it, but how can you not if they lose this series?
Again, we don't want to have the show we're going to have after they lose it now.
Yeah.
Guys, the point is here. Everything has to be on the table if this team goes out like this. Because this team, you've done everything, okay? You got surround them with shooters, great. You had two of the top 3 3-point shooters in the league. In Horford and Brogdon here, with Derek White percentage going through the roof as well this season. Even Marcus Smart was, competent from 3. You brought in Sam Hauser. He shoots 40 from 3 for the year. You did that part. You gave them depth. Okay, you even, you didn't get anything out of Gallinari. That was too bad, but this was the loaded up and go for it sort of year. You gave them everything they needed. On paper, this team's better than last year's team, and this team was overwhelming favorites to start the year. They were favorites entering the playoffs, certainly heavy favorites when Milwaukee went out. Everything is relative to expectations. Anything short of at least getting to the finals is an epic fail and is something that you have to address the why. This is a healthy team at this moment in time. There's no excuses to be had. Everyone wants to put it entirely on Mazzulla. I don't know. I think you're really absolving the players of any responsibility by putting it all on a coach. The question here becomes with these guys, this notion that they're only 26, 27, 25, whatever. Guys, this is close to fully developed. We know you might not hit your prime. You're not making a leap from 26 to 27 that's going to be otherworldly. Jaylen Brown is Jaylen Brown. This is the version of Jaylen you're going to get. He's very good. I think Jason Tatum has been almost fully cooked for 2-3 years now, Bobby. His game has been very developed, and it's been about the same for the last couple of years. I think this is who they are. So, yeah, maybe they gain maturity, but I don't think it doesn't keep getting better and better. They're pretty much all in terms of who they're going to be. So you can make assessments. You don't just keep assuming, well, in 2 years, 3 years, just think how good they'll be. I think there's
probably one more leap for both of them. Maybe Brown's at that level, although Brown keeps getting better every year. So you don't know when that's going to
Brown has gotten better. I continue to argue. I think a lot of the things people say in Tatum, I think are things they want to see, but statistically it doesn't bear out. There's one major difference in Tatum's game this year, and only one major difference. It's getting to the free throw line more frequently. Is that a style thing? Well, no. I mean, yes and no. Most of the numbers show he's playing relatively the same type of game he's always been playing. Maybe he's getting more calls, but right now, all of his increase in points is based off of more volume of threes and free throws. That's where he's grown. But developmentally, passing X, Y, and Z and all of the stuff, the numbers, everything's the same. Everything's roughly the same. Shooting percentage, efficiency, X, Y, and Z. He's gotten to the line more. His true shooting percentage went up as a result of that, and he's taking more threes. That was kind of something he did differently. That was more approach than like skill. Whereas Brown, you see him developing new skills as time has gone on or getting better at stuff he wasn't as good at. I don't know that there's another level here. So I think it's fair to question everything. I think
Yeah.
everything's on the table.
And the only thing that matters when it comes to another level is the playmaking, which didn't advance too much for Brown this year. And even Tatum, if he took a leap at all there, it was a small one.
Small.
So that's their hindrances as players as they continue to try to work together, is that playmaking, especially since mid-season Tatum took over more ball time after Smart got hurt, and it hasn't diminished much since. He's been that ball handler, and I think a lot of the offensive issues they've run into have come from some of that pace problem and the, I guess, overall movement of the offense, which does decrease when he's handling the ball compared to guards here. But they have the guards, as you said. They have the shooters. They have the defenders to play top-tier defense. They have it all right now. And so I don't want to trade Brown. In fact, you know my argument, John. I wish this team would take on more of Brown's will, determination, forcefulness, and leadership approach, frankly. I think Brown's done about as much leadership-wise as anybody on the roster this year when it comes to stuff he says and does, especially on the floor. So I hate saying get rid of Brown, go get some stuff, and put it even more on Tatum to carry this group into the future. I think Brown's that necessary counter to Tatum's approach. And they even each other out and they complement each other. And I do think they did a good job of that for much of this year. But the tweet you posted earlier of the end of game 4 and this thing over the last 3 games here about Brown not getting the ball enough. Really, this whole series, it's been a thing where Brown doesn't get the ball enough, and he seems upset with it. Some of the discontent we heard from Brown all year, and maybe his desire to lead a team eventually on his own. I don't know about that, but it might be something he just wants to do, and maybe he wants to do it sooner rather than later.
It's
so
part of the respect card too, right, Bobby? It's like respect. Everyone, when Jaylen Brown says respect, that they think they mean like us or the fans or something. That's not what it means. It means the organization is just absolutely obsessed with Jason Tatum, him being the alpha, him being the leader. Every coach puts the ball in his hands, and I'm just freaking sitting here. Like that's part of it. When he talks about respect, he's talking about a little bit of all of it. And I think that factors in, which is like, okay, I guess you do it, I guess we're not calling my number. Which game was it when Brown went absolutely bananas and Tatum got the last shot late in the year?
Oh, geez. I can't name it off the top of my head, but...
You know what I'm talking about, though, and everyone's like, what are you doing? Brown was literally unstoppable,
Yeah, and that happened all year at times. The late game, especially in the playoffs, it's been a struggle, and Brown continues to go uninvolved in those moments. So, this is why you come to Brown, and we've had this conversation before. What else are you getting for anything else? Smart, I know everyone's going to talk about Smart.
It's over.
He's more valuable to you than anyone else.
You're done. You've lost value on Smart and Rob. The only major moves coming with this team are come with Tatum and Brown. You're not getting anything. As you said, Bobby, you're right. You're not getting more value.
What can you change? I'm all for talking about trading Tatum instead of Brown, but that's an even harder trade to pull off. Like, you look across the league, right? Like Luka, could you get Luka for Tatum? I think you think about that, but that's about it. And I don't even know if that would be on the table. That's just such a hard trade to pull off, trading a Tatum. I don't want to trade Brown, again. But if you're going to look at this roster after this series and say, what can you change after another bad postseason loss? You want to do the coach, fine. I mean, we can talk about the coach, John, because I don't think he's done a great job this postseason, especially as I start to look through everything. And there's a lot of gripes I have that I really just got to hit on at this point, because I don't like playing the blame game with the coach, but there is a lot of stuff stacking up that I just haven't liked this year. The threes, Grant, Rob now, just going completely underutilized. And he got asked about it today and just said, yeah, matchups and not anything Rob's doing. We're just, I guess, trying to space out the floor against Embiid, which makes sense, but you're not defending well, and your best defender's not on the floor much.
But it's like Rob from 3 years ago, which is like...
It's very similar, yeah.
You're not utilizing the things he does well, and you're just putting him out there to do the things that you want to do, instead of like recognizing like, what does Rob do, and what can we do with Rob out there utilizing his strengths, not doing it at all,
Yeah,
there's a lot. We talked about it. The point guard rotation, who closes games, sometimes forgetting about White and or Brogdon late in games. sticking with things, the constant slowdown in the offense, with the team, the not calling the timeouts and whether or not that's been successful or not successful, forgetting about, going to really, really, really short benches at times when he didn't need to, playing starters 38, 39, 40 minutes in games that they were comfortably in control, not finding ways to make sure that you were constantly working in players like Hauser, and or Pritchard, keep them involved in case you need it. Look what the Lakers and look what Philly has done in the playoffs
The
here.
defense thing drove me crazy all year too.
Yeah, dusting off a couple players they hadn't really used. Lonnie Walker and who did Philly just go to last game? House,
Yep.
Daniel House, and getting contributions out of them. Joe just kind of coaching a little bit scared. As far as that went, a lot of times during the year, and
Joe looked a little lost the last two games.
Right now he's a little rattled. He definitely looks like it got the best of him. I think he. I don't think he knows if he knows the answers, and I think he might be starting to feel that.
And it's not his fault.
That the players are sensing he doesn't have the answers either.
He got put in an impossible position this year and then lost another coach on the bench in the process. And you know what? I know I always get on him for going back to offense, but that's his philosophy. That's worked for much of this year, and I don't think he wants to veer away from it over a couple tough playoff games. Again, he said after last game that's the first time he felt all playoffs. This is just his opinion. You can agree or disagree with it as the coach, that they played bad. So you're going to change things drastically off one bad game in his mind? You don't think so. But does he have enough on the bench? I know you hate this conversation, John, and I try to have it all year, but the Hardy thing. And look at the bench. It's Sullivan, a shooting coach. It's Tony Dobbins, so I'm not sure what
Hardy
his expertise is.
But that's the whole thing is like Mazzulla, I'm sure in the Celtics' mind was, if you gave Brad truth serum and say, how long till you think Joe Mazzulla could be a good candidate for a head coach? He might have said 3 or 4 years. There's no, when Ime was still here and Hardy was there, I mean, he's a third or fourth. I mean, probably behind Stoudemire because Stoudemire's Ime's
He was on the back of the bench.
He's the last guy on the bench. If you were to ask, does this guy have head coaching? You might say, yeah, maybe after another 5, 6, 7 years as an assistant, in a more prominent role, and maybe he goes somewhere else and he can really be the A1 guy to the coach and he learns directly under their wing, perhaps. But you basically, Mazzulla becoming the head coach is the football equivalent of grabbing the guy, who's coaches the friggin' special teams, and that happened with Joe Judge, but a small low tier assistant and ascending all the way to the position rather than a coordinator type. He wasn't in that prominent role, so he's a smart basketball guy, but he jumped the line by like several years to get to this point. It's not surprising he's a little bit. I think they love his mind. I think they think he knows basketball cold, but like, there's a lot about coaching that's really hard. We were Bobby, remember the conversation we had about Ime? We were saying the Ime thing, you can be a tough guy and or you can be the players type of guy when you're number 2 and the players come to you and they talk to you and say, man, coach is being rough on me, and you can be that guy. One step, just 1 foot, 6 inches over on the bench is a totally different ball game. And we were wondering whether Ime, with that long ass pedigree of having been both an NBA player and a longtime assistant, learning directly behind and under some excellent head coaches, was ready for the challenge. This is totally different than that.
Yeah. His time in the NBA as a whole isn't long, as you say.
No.
He came in 2020. And then before that,
it's so fast. It doesn't happen like this.
He's 34. He's younger than Horford. This is all the stuff we talked about at the beginning of the year. And when we came in and he was one of the big question marks, he didn't end up becoming one of the big question marks for a lot of the year. I thought he did a great job, and he fixed a lot of stuff. That first month or two, we're like, whoa, we've never seen them play like this before. So it's really tough for me to look at him and say, blow him out of here, because I think he got better as the year went on. I think he's Tatum's guy, and I think as much as the media stuff drives us crazy, I'm sure the guys in the room look at that and like nod their heads as that he's out there defending them. And if that fires him up and he's kind of got that motivation day in and day out, I've seen his process. I've talked to him behind the scenes about different stuff and just the methodologies, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Like, I know the threes drive
He's
me
right.
crazy, but
He's
he's
right.
right.
He's
Like, it's
right.
a math game, and that's what led them to be one of the best teams in the league this year. But you probably need a little bit of help on the bench. And we talked about that coming into the year. Do you bring in some guys with some experience? Do you bring in some guys with some expertise? Maybe a defensive coordinator? That might help. Maybe just a different perspective on that bench. Because, again, it's not his fault. He lost a ton. Anyone in that position, regardless of their experience, would have been challenged this year. And I think now you're just looking at him in this moment, high stakes, and it's probably getting to him a little bit. He made a critical mistake at the end of game 4, and he admitted it. So
Yeah.
you're going to fire him, move on to a fourth coach in 4 years? I just don't think that's the answer. And you know what? I don't think trading Brown on a whim for anything's the answer either. Like, if there's nothing out there for Brown, all you can do is run it back. You don't just make a move for making a move. Even
No,
as
but just
frustrating as this could be.
no, you don't. And again, this is all premature because they come back, they beat the Sixers, they smoke the Heat, and they go to the finals. You're just talking about coming back and learning from, whatever it was you did this year. Joe having a full season under his belt. What can you do different in year 2? You're talking about a lot of different things. You're talking about, another year of growth of Jaylen and Jason. You're talking about Jaylen Brown signing a long-term max extension, you locking in a piece of your future for 5 years. You're talking about Rob Williams having an entire offseason to actually develop. You're talking about Gallinari coming in here maybe and contributing. You held on to him all season long, and you
Javon
probably
Begarin?
you probably let Grant walk in that situation. You're talking about a run it back scenario,
Yeah.
there. So
absolutely, and it's just frustrating because you're losing another opportunity here, golden opportunity. And I said last year after they lost the finals, it's never promised you get back. And it seems so likely they'd get back this year, especially as things developed in Milwaukee and on the other side of the bracket with Miami now breaking through and looking like a manageable opponent to some degree. Even on the West, things looking like there's no real powerhouse emerging. You're the powerhouse. You should have been the team that stepped out and separated itself from the pack here. That's what's frustrating. And the second round exit speaks for itself. I mean, it's a disaster. You have to look at everything after that. And that doesn't mean change things, but
it's premature.
you got to look at it.
It's premature. We wanted to talk about the impact of Tatum and Brown. These are both good things. Okay. Yeah. These are both good things. Jaylen Brown, whether he accepts or whether you offer, there's clarity on his situation this offseason. And Jason Tatum, as well, is in a position where it would be silly to not accept it. So both of these guys are most likely signing. So again, if this is what you like, this is what you want, and you believe in these guys and want these guys, these are both obviously hugely positive developments. Even if you don't, the ability to protect your assets by having that hammer, knowing that you can offer that much more money, gives you a massive leg up. So it's a huge advantage for the Celtics to be in this position, assuming that they do want to pay it and they want to go forward with these guys. So these are two things you don't have to worry about right now. You've got the ability to offer these guys way more than they can get in the open market if they chose to leave. So those are good. And in most cases, as we've seen, how many guys have walked away from a Supermax? None. So again, this almost assures at least you sign them and then you have the asset to work with if it doesn't work out down the road. Reality is you're looking at a Tatum and Brown led team for another 5-6 years.
Do you think they'll offer it?
Yeah, I would be stunned. You don't get to this point and not. This is the cost of doing business. I've said this before. I don't have any I don't have any insight into Wick's finances. Other than, we know he's not among like the cajillionaire owners, certainly in that lower tier. But like, if you're not doing business this way, then get out. This is the cost of doing business. You're dying to have 2 All-NBA type talents on your team and praying for the opportunity to be able to offer them enough money to keep them here. That's a dream. for an owner. Sorry. So if you're looking at your checkbook right now, then you've got no business owning a team. You have to imagine that's not going to be an issue. The only way it's an issue is if Wick puts Brad on the spot and says, "Do you really think that these are the guys we want to build with?" And if not, and say, maybe we look to move one. And you know what? Money can influence your judgment a little bit. So if they went out, could you look at this team a little bit and say, one of these $300
You also
million
have to consider whether
one of these $300 million guys has to go, because I don't think they're worth it, and I don't think we're winning with them. And they could that choice.
That's one consideration.
That decision could be made.
Then you have to ask: is this, for all intents and purposes, a 2-year commitment? Is he just signing this to get the money, and then down the line, if things don't go great, you lose him at that point with probably a little less leverage to move him? That's tough to predict, and I think it's hard for them to know what he's going to do now, never mind a couple of years down the line.
You don't know. So it is what
you probably just offer it and see what happens now, and get that extra year. I mean, the year without being able to trade him is great. It just erases all that uncertainty until 2024, 25.
That is true. Yeah.
That's the biggest bonus to it.
It changes a lot, and it's like I said, it's a very positive development. We're going to talk a little bit about the Game 6 before we boogie and talk about whether some changes need to be made. First off, we want to tell you guys about new sponsor we've brought back on board. We're very happy to have HelloFresh here. Farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients, seasonal recipes delivered to your door. Skip the trip to the grocery store. Get down with HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Make home cooking easy and fun. Bobby likes his fish. That's what he gets. Sherrod likes his meatloaf. We know all of these things. The most important thing here is not having to go to that grocery store. This is the thing that gets me every time for the one ingredient you forgot. It's all there. It's pre-packaged, portioned, literally every single thing that you need to make the type of stuff that you probably wouldn't be cooking at home, because it requires a lot of prep. It requires a lot of ingredients. It requires stuff that you're going to buy this massive bunch of cilantro and use just a little, like it. This is exactly what you need, the right amounts, no extra mess, very simple, 20-minute prep time, and you have a restaurant quality meal waiting at your doorstep. So again, go to HelloFresh.com/16Garden, use the code 16Garden, 16 free meals plus free shipping. Once again, HelloFresh.com/16Garden. Use that code 16Garden for 16 free meals. Also tell you guys about Athletic Greens. You want to start your day right? We're all about feeling good, health, wellness. Go to athleticgreens.com. Take advantage of the special offer you see on the screen. 5 free travel packs, year-long supply of vitamin D. HelloFresh, as you probably know, is a kind of do-it-all supplement. 75 vitamins, minerals, probiotics, adaptogens. You just grab it, one scoop and a cup of water in the morning, and you're done. Immune system, sleep, focus, recovery, gut health, all sorts of different things that you can probably chase down with a million different pills and supplements. You just get it here in one shot. So again, athleticgreens.com/garden. Take advantage of that free gift. You support either of these two sponsors, HelloFresh or Athletic Greens, we will send you a Garden Report t-shirt, as we do. There is a form in the description of this show. All you have to do is fill it out with your receipt, and we will send it to you right away. So, Bobby, let's get to Game 6 here. You talked to Joe today. I will say this, as we've talked about Joe Mazzulla a little bit. Joe looks shook on the bench. Joe has looked shook in his last 2 or 3 media availabilities. Almost like he was spoken to. Almost like it was like, stop fighting with these guys. Stop getting defensive. Start figuring it out. Like, enough. Like, something's
I also think losing leads to that.
And losing. Something's different in his demeanor. Something's different in his demeanor. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I actually was of the mind, I would not have admitted the timeout thing if I were him. I would not have. I don't think that helped him. I thought it weakened him. I honestly just keep plowing straight ahead and just do what you do here. You wonder if there's a little crisis of confidence here, though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look at the moment in the second half when Pritchard comes flying in, and a similar, well, not similar moment, but that first round, Blake comes flying in when they're about to win the series and then they lose the game. that was strange to me. This is almost the opposite of we need something to swing this game right now. And Pritchard did next to nothing. And I saw some people saying that they go to Pritchard again to space out the floor. And that was, I think, kind of your point last night, that you want to see them go smaller with shooters all around. And I get that, because it's not like these Horford switches are helping you defensively. And your guards and wings off the bench are probably better shooters than Horford, at least in a vacuum. It's tough, though, because Hauser and Pritchard are coming in cold, and Horford's been shooting for the entire postseason now. So I just don't like that idea. I don't like taking Horford off the court.
The Pritchard thing, you mentioned it because this commenter, I just wanted to slide it in there. I tweeted about this too. This is
right. This is what's going to happen.
This shit bugs me to no end. Like, I don't know if Joe's not telling them or they're just not doing it. What do you think Peyton Pritchard's on the floor for? To play defense? The guy did not touch the freaking ball. Didn't touch the ball when you brought him in as a spark off the bench. The point is, run him off some screens and get a shot off. What are you doing? What's the point? Why bring Rob in if you're not going to threaten the rim, and challenge people and stress them vertically? What's the point of having these people out there if you're not going to let them do what they do?
Hauser. How many times did Hauser come in and
if
not
all
shoot
anybody's going to stand around and watch Jason Tatum play pick and roll, and three other people stand around for space, who cares who's in there?
Didn't Jaylen say something to that effect last night too? We got the same looks over and over, and I don't know if that meant we ran the same play over and over, but that's what it seemed like just watching it. And Tatum just kept attacking aimlessly. And I know Joe Sway liked the aggression there, but that's not the approach that's going to turn this series around now. Pritchard's not going to turn this series around. I like the idea of maximizing a guy who's already playing. Actually, two guys who are already playing in Rob and Grant.
So let's look at this comment here, because I wanted to take the conversation here. This has been, I'm torn between literally.
This is where I'm at.
I'm torn between either literally just putting Rob on the shelf and putting shooters out there and playing Grant more minutes, or
I can't believe you're saying that.
Or because they're not utilizing him. He's useless out there. When he's out there, they're a freaking mess right now. They're not doing anything with him.
Well, he's coming off the bench.
I know.
So he's not playing with a lot of these guys.
He's not. Or go double big.
Yeah, go double big. You can ignore PJ. If you can match 33 Tucker minutes with Rob, and I know some of those are bench minutes where PJ's playing center, that's great. Again, I'd give PJ 15 shots. Make him beat you. If that's how your season's going to end, so be it at this point.
You know what double big, you know what the unintended consequence of double big is, Bobby?
What's that?
Way more Grant minutes in second unit, and
I like that.
And getting and possibly Cornette, which I know you like, but also getting
Cornette's played well against this team.
Also Joe getting confused by what to do with guards, and Marcus Smart playing 37 minutes, Malcolm Brogdon playing 19, and Derek White playing 22.
How about Blake? You could play Blake.
I'm saying what ends up happening is Joe doesn't know what to do with the guards after that.
I don't care. Brogdon's not playing well.
White's not playing well.
So go bigger. Go defensive.
Go bigger, go home.
Yeah,
Rob has looked completely clueless to me all playoffs. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I think sometimes he gets a little lost on the bench. And this isn't a good matchup for him either. At least as a center, right? He's playing drop, and I think that's not natural for him. He's guarding the pick and roll in that spot. He hasn't done that well. So move him to an off-ball guy where he can rove and help. Use his strength defensively. They're putting him in a bad position on both ends of the floor right now. Switching him out in the perimeter, I mean, when has that ever been his strength on a hard end?
Right.
It's happened too many times, and
that's my fear.
They're just not utilizing him right.
You start Allen Rob, and they're gonna find him on every. They're gonna find one of those guys ISO'd on Harden on every possession, every single one. That's my fear.
But if he's guarding Tucker, I'm not scared.
I know,
of Tucker
but I'm saying it's just gonna be every single one is gonna be Harden on a big.
Well, being realistic, the way Joe talked today, I don't see a ton changing. I think they're going to roll the ball out there and just hope the threes fall this time.
I agree.
We got good looks. We did. We made the right passes. That's their approach right now. I'm still stunned how they handled the postgame last night. I know you can't change your entire team because of a bad loss and come up with all these adjustments. They try to do that after game one and end up sounded like they were disconnected in terms of how to address what they're doing. So they all just said on to the next game, forget the past. And that just seemed, I know Gary wrote about that and I wrote about it too.
How do you learn?
It just seemed to be such an apathetic
How do you learn?
response to the worst loss ever.
There's something to be said emotionally from moving forward from difficult defeats. There's a problem with not acknowledging why you lost and trying to rectify that. And again, as you said, Bobby, if they're just going to go out and try the same thing and the Sixers have them figured out, or they're going to play the same coverages and give Embiid these basically layup free throw jumpers, which they gave him all game long by playing drop way deep into the lane. If you're going to play drop, at least pick it up earlier. Like they're dropping into, I lost my mind when Harden and Embiid did that. And Rob's playing drop and Rob's standing in the middle of the lane and conceding these absolute, they're layups for Embiid, these free throw jumpers. He absolutely, if these guys can beat you in the mid range, you can't drop that far.
It's the opposite of what we talk about with the threes. They want to give those up because of the percentages. But in one playoff game, if that guy's shooting whatever he shot last game, that's why you lose. Yeah. And you're giving it up and you're not adjusting. That's brutal, especially against, that happened last round with Young. Remember that got Young going? Yep. Now it's happening with Embiid.
Young killed them there.
And imagine you were in the finals against Durant and Booker. You're just going to let them shoot those? You have to change. You have to adjust. So I get why people are getting on Joe right now. He needs to make some adjustments next game. If they go down doing the same stuff, it's a bad look.
Yeah, and again,
that's what killed Budenholzer.
Yeah. I don't know. I honestly, Bobby, the thing is, like, I don't think if you're the best team, you shouldn't have to redefine what you do, and you shouldn't be making adjustments to the other team. I am torn a little bit between approach and execution. At any point in time yesterday, did you see Philly, with the exception of every once in a while throwing a zone in there just to mess with them, which it does. Every time you see the zone, it does jolt them out of their rhythm a little bit offensively. They never had rhythm at all yesterday. At any point in time, did you see them moving the basketball and moving without the ball? All I saw was dribbling till there was 10 seconds left on the clock.
Same play.
They ran the same friggin' play every single time.
The one wrinkle they threw out there was that they replaced Tucker with House in those screening actions. So
yeah, but the Celtics ran. I'm saying the Celtics offensively.
Oh yeah.
What did the Celtics do?
No, the Celtics look so repetitive. That's why Brown's comment stuck out to me. And again, I don't want to be Brown's PR guy here, but I think a lot of the stuff he's saying and the demands for the ball and just kind of his desire to put his imprint on this team. You saw it early. What did he go 6 for 8 in the first again? He's stutter stepping to the rim, making tough finishes.
6 for 9. Sorry. Brown was 6 for 9 entering the fourth quarter.
Yeah, all mostly in the first.
Yeah. And so 6 for 9 entering the fourth quarter, most of it happening in the first, basically nothing for the second and third and parts of the fourth quarter until the game was desperation time and it was just grab it and chuck it.
Yeah.
So
brutal.
So bad stuff all around. Again, confidence level is low, which probably means they win by 30. And so that's just how it goes with this team. The problem is not like they suck. The problem isn't that the season is over. The problem is you don't have any clue which team shows up tomorrow. There is a world, Bobby, in which they show up dead ass tomorrow, which means that's the worst thing is if they show up with the same effort that they had in game 5. That means there's a deeper problem, either with the coach or with each other.
How could that happen?
Because they might, like I said,
is there a divide of some
sort?
If
they're not on the same page, which I've never thought they were, because I think everyone wants to do different things and wants to play differently. I don't even think they're necessarily aligned with their coach. And it comes apart because of that, and they're going at it on their own with their own individual agendas. And I'm not saying it's like I want my points. It's just I believe Tatum knows how to play a certain way. Brown knows how to play a certain way. Smart knows how to play a certain way. And I believe sometimes you kind of knock them back into your orbit of what you want to have happen all the time, but they fall out of it so easily. And when they struggle, they lean more into their bad habits rather than try to get back to their good ones. And if it's failing like this and you're losing that love and trust or whatever the hell you want to call it, if they show up and they're not fighting for each other, I mean, how many times they hit the freaking ground? It's like you gotta fight for each other here. I mean, this sounds like cliche stuff. It's the playoffs. You gotta lay stuff on the line here. I mean, we talked about the video I showed from Game 4. The Jaylen Brown getting his ass knocked to the ground hard by Jalen Embiid. Nobody even steps up to challenge Embiid and say, "Dude, what the?"
Do we have that clip from last night where Brown's talking about not having energy?
No, maybe, but like Brown's on his
Because I know you love that
Brown's on
one.
his ass. Okay, Brogdon walks over to him slow. Horford and White both meander towards him a little bit there. No one goes towards Embiid to kind of be like, dude, what the F was that? Brogdon picks up Brown eventually. Tatum standing at the top of the three-point line never moved. Like that's a bad response. That's a really bad response at that
And
point in the
Brown,
game.
who we knew something was up back in the traffic game, and they're like, who cares about the 1 seed? And it worked, right? And that's the story of this team, is it works out for them because they have the talent and they're better than everybody. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes other things swing, whether it's the shooting or game plan stuff or even just the energy on a given night. And for Brown to come out last night, and I know you were waiting for it, we came out flat. Energy was a little deflated.
Yep.
The game just swung in their favor tonight. And they say this constantly, the passive voice, like stuff just happens.
Yeah, like it
had nothing to do with us.
They talk about their effort in games like it's the weather, They do. It's like, oh man, what a bummer it rained today. Like, what a bummer we didn't show up today. Like, it's beyond their control. Yeah, it's always been so perplexing.
So yeah, I know you have them winning this series, John, and I could easily see
I
it too.
still do, but it's hard.
I don't want to make this big. I don't want to make this big stand, because I did it last year of like, oh, they're gonna lose or oh, they're gonna win. If you made me pick, I'm probably going Philly in 7. But the point, regardless of whether they win or lose this series, is they probably just aren't ready to win the title still this year. Whether they lose to Miami after this, whether they lose in the finals, which was my pick coming into the year. So really, your analysis of it shouldn't change. Just like maybe last year it shouldn't have changed. And fortunately, it didn't. They went out and got a Brogdon and tried to address some of the stuff that went wrong. Brogdon made a difference this year, but I don't think he ended up being the guy who changed or just made this overwhelming change the way some people thought that addition might go.
Yeah, I mean,
it's the core of the team. Like they can just keep stacking talent at the edge of the roster until Brown and Tatum figure it out. Nothing's going to change.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it always comes back to that. It's, great power, great responsibility. Like who's looking at the Lakers and being like, if they don't win, blaming D'Angelo Russell, people blaming,
well, they do.
I'm saying, but what I'm saying is like, you're going to go, no, you look at LeBron and AD, like look what do this as a Celtics fan. When you look at other teams, when things go to crap, and then what do you see in those teams? How do you judge them? How often do you go 3, 4, 5 players down the bench, down from the top, and say that guy's the reason they didn't win? It's very rare. You're looking at the top people and saying they can't get it done. There's some situations like Dallas, where you're like, wow, there's nothing there. But like, this is a really good supporting cast, and basically 7 starting caliber players. And Grant Williams, who started 50% of games over the last couple of years, or last year, it's really, there's no real excuse here. So yes, it's the core, and it always is, and that's what you're going to keep going back to. It's their job not just to play at a top level; it's their job to lift people. What have we always talked about? The knock: do they make their teammates better? No, the answer is no, they don't. But they're terrific individual talents, and if they play within the construct of what's best for the team, then things go well. But it's not because they're out there making their teammates better. And that's always going to be what it comes back to.
Well, to bring it back to Brown, this is the last thing I got. What do you think of them largely blowing off his call for more shots, more ball time? Because Tatum's done it. Joe did it again today. It's weird to me. Combined with the video you put out there.
I think...
Don't you think it's so easy to say, yeah, we got to make a concerted effort to
I hate
them?
to speculate, honestly, because I think, the easy thing to say is why. Brown is riskier with the ball in his hands. The more you put it in his hands, the higher volume of turnovers, and honestly, the less likelihood that anybody is involved. With Tatum, there's more of a likelihood that there will be more people involved. I don't think he's a terrific playmaker, but I think he's more likely to make the right read.
But he needs to get
Jaylen
shots.
Brown's more likely just to score, but when you give it to Jaylen, it's almost kind of like, okay, the rest of us are done for this trip down. So it's just here you go, Jaylen, go cook. And so maybe that's part of the reluctance is like, nah, man, we got to work it. We got to do stuff. And when it goes to Jaylen, it's just going to end up with Jaylen shooting. Sometimes that's great. Maybe that's the reasoning behind it, because otherwise I can't think it is like the offense doesn't run through Jaylen. By the time it gets to Jaylen, it's time for Jaylen to try and score. And that's just what he does. Yeah. So I don't know if that's one of the reasons why that they try to do other stuff. I mean, also, it makes sense. If the ball's going to be in either or's hands, why do they not screen for each other? I mean, it makes sense that Tatum and Brown are obviously going to have similar defenders on them and probably better defenders on them. You don't benefit from a switch between Tatum and Brown. So they're never going to be in actions with one another, really. If one's going to have it and you're going to be screening with either Smart or one of the bigs, and then maybe you get a kick out to one of the other guys. But it just doesn't happen that often. They're not, when one is involved, the other feels very uninvolved in the offense.
You might have to adjust the minutes. Yeah. You just might have to adjust the minutes, or even just the play calls to get the ball in the other's hands. Yeah. I know they don't want to call a lot of plays.
But then it's just my ball, your ball, my ball, your ball,
Right. And right now, the big problem, as you said, is that the movement and activity isn't at the level it should be. You're not seeing those secondary
when Tatum gives
drives.
it up, he just stays literally 5 feet back of the 3-point line. Like that's it. If the ball's out of his hands, he's out of the play.
There were some magical sets early in the year, like 7 passes, balls flying all over the place, 2 drives, and someone's nailing a 3 during that 21-5 start. And it is just so disappointing that they couldn't build off that. We've had questions ever since the slip-ups, and I think it started with that awful losing streak against Indiana or Orlando. And every time something like that came up, they just kind of blew it off and said, oh, no big deal.
I did say this. The reason I said this, by the way, is because it was a rarity. I thought he played a near perfect game that game. It doesn't happen often. But it did in this game. So
the game 3,
he played a perfect game.
Or was it? No, it was game 2 where Tatum got in foul trouble and he had to run the
perfect
show.
Game.
Yeah,
he was almost every read he made. It was game 2 when he picked up Harden early. He was energized. He was focused. He was locked in.
That was the best game of the series.
Best game of the series. Also, for what it's worth, Jaylen Brown hasn't played the same level of defense since game 3. He hasn't. It's not the same.
No. I mean, I like his approach.
Yeah.
But is it him or is it the scheme? All the switching.
I don't know.
They're getting picked apart on defense. I keep screaming for more defense, and I hope that's the direction they go tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, we're gonna wrap it. But we are back. There's a post game. Bobby's heading to Philly in the morning. Sherrod will be in Philly. The rest of us will be doing stuff from here. Nick will be in the chat, so you can get him going. He's fired up now. Nick, the Celtics have made Nick.
I'm fired up too. Last night was tough.
Yeah, I could tell.
That was tough to watch.
Yeah. That was
just grueling. I mean, our coverage shouldn't be ending here. Mid-May.
No. First of all, Boston winter sports teams should not be done before Mother's Day. Like brutal.
We thought both these teams were going into June.
Yeah.
At the least.
Yeah.
And man, May 10th.
Yeah.
They're on the brink of elimination.
Last reminder for you guys out there, if you want to get involved, as you know, especially those of you in Massachusetts, with legalized sports betting here in Mass now. We've partnered with FanDuel, official wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network. Head over to fanduel.com/Boston. Get in on a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. That means you can bet up to $1,000, lose it, and they'll give it right back to you. As you know, you may or may not know, FanDuel is the official partner of the NBA, and obviously with the playoffs in full swing, a lot of things that you can get involved with here if you do want to sign up for FanDuel. So once again, fanduel.com/Boston, 1,000 in bonus bets, no sweat first bet. Check it out. So Celtics Sixers tomorrow, as we said, what's the tip?
7:30.
Right, I like those. 7:30 tip. We'll be here with a show. We're hoping it's not our last post-game show of the year. Even if it is, there'll be more Garden Report coverage throughout the offseason, as it'll be an interesting offseason. But let's at least take it to 7 and see what happens, right?
Right. Yeah. One more home game. You know, there's a staggering number on home game 7s, isn't there? It gets pretty overwhelming, the home team winning those. And, you know, we haven't mentioned it here. Doc and the 3-2. It's a thing.
Yep.
You know, what's Philly going to look like in this position of power now? They had to fight their way back. Embiid had so much motivation.
And again, you have to remember,
they're in a comfortable spot.
This is a team that the Celtics have handled it throughout the regular season, like that didn't match up well with them. So they're really screwing the pooch right now. Celtics are. Philly's playing well, but the Celtics are really letting them have their way. It's very strange. And Embiid's been a monster, much quicker than we expected. I honestly think Embiid's shot blocking broke Tatum's brain early in the series, and it's really affected his approach.
That's another reason to give Brown the ball too.
Yeah.
He handles that rim protection better than Tatum does.
There's no doubt. Anyway, we're gonna wrap it. We'll see you guys tomorrow night for our Game 6 post game.